if we go back to building smart a little bit, what is
Yes.
in your agenda for the coming years or months?
Well,
Months.
my agenda is actually doing some of the things we were speaking about, kind of breaking down the silos, making the industry work more across the supply chain. So buildingSMART we are working on a new strategy, which we need to involve the board and also maybe some of the members, but due to this COVID-19 situation, we have just been working on it internally.
Yeah.
So what we are thinking now is that our new strategy will be built upon our standards naturally. So we have ISC, we have BCF, we have BSTD, we have these several different standards. But we are also involved in a lot of different standardization projects in Europe, in CEN, ISO, and also at NS, Norwegian Standard. So my colleague Chi is project manager of several standardization projects. So that is kind of our fundament. And then we have the network, which is on top of that. We have all these different groups kind of discussing how should we solve specific problems in an IFC. We now have a law room which are discussing the law when you have, say you put an IFC in a cloud, then what happens if the cloud is in Ireland, if all of this data, if I let you produce directly from my BIM model and then suddenly I change something in the BIM model, who is responsible for this? Because, you have all these different law aspects. We have some lawyer firms and also some governmental stakeholders discussing that in one room. So we have all these different groups where people are discussing, and some are kind of working groups. They actually produce kind of white papers or guidelines or whatever. And some of them are more for discussion and for sharing knowledge. And then on top of that, we will be working more, I don't want to say political, because that's more like what these unions are doing. It's more like working with this kind of breaking down the silos, making sure that the government understands the importance of using open standards and thinking across the supply chain. Because if you are going to work across the supply chain, I think you need to use open standards. You need to, and not only buildingSMART standards, you need to use GS1 standards, which has identification standards and standard for barcodes, etc. So that you avoid proprietary, is that the correct word?
Yeah.
Systems. Because then you're kind of locked, you know. Say you have a building, you are going to manage it for 50 years. And then if you have a proprietary system somewhere, that software vendor kind of has a huge control of your system. And if it goes bankrupt, then what happens then? So when you use open standards, then you have a more higher flexibility. You can change softwares without getting that huge an impact. You can get offers from several different companies because the way you have built a lot of your collaboration within your systems, the assets are using open standards.
Yeah.
So I think what we will be working on is kind of trying to break down these silos or these barriers, trying to get people to understand that, well, you know, you cannot just look at one isolated sector. You need to look at and get this understanding you were speaking about. We cannot only speak with people, the normal people we are speaking with, which are the ones who are very interested in IFC and BIM and understand all of this. We need to speak to maybe boards of directors. We need to speak to like the private clients you were speaking about, that we were talking about earlier, making them understand why is this so important and what are the benefits and the opportunities of actually using open standards.